All right, Mac OS, Mac OS. Where did it come from? As I said, it did not appear out of thin air. Mac OS, again, it came from this Darwin system, and I'm going to go ahead and show you next step OS, because next step, there's a lot of people use that now. So next step, basically, next step here is a derivative. And why did people love it? Basically, what happened was Steve Jobs got fired because he was a butt and he was a jerk, and that tends to happen. So a lot of people hate him, but usually when you have a genius like that, they tend to offend people. They really do. Elon Musk is kind of an example of that, but I would not put him on par with what Steve Jobs thought of and did and pushed. But basically, Steve Jobs, he's over there at Apple doing the thing, and what is it? Pretty early on in Mac's life, in Apple's life, he gets fired. And honestly, according to his own words, you can go and watch it. He was really kind of destroying the company and doing some things that he didn't realize, right? He's like 22, 23 years old. How old are you, right? And he's running this multinational company that's got a lot of money. And so he gets fired. So he goes over and creates a new company that he calls Next Computer, because they're going to build the next computer. And I'm just going to show you some graphics, some look at what the OS looked like. They basically just sat down and said, what do we want this sucker to do? And why? Why do we want it to do it? And so this is about the time that, he's looking and going, networking is going to be huge. We're probably going to have this internet thing is probably going to start blowing up. And wouldn't it be great if you could have these different things, and you could drag this picture here and you could drag that picture there. All this stuff that now we take for granted, they were actually pioneering all of that. And if you look up Windows NT4, you'll see that Windows NT4 looks much like this. And so they did a ton of stuff. As a matter of fact, Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, meaning the inventor of HTTP, HTML, and all that, he was using a Next Cube. He was using a Next computer, and has said flat out it was inspiration for a lot of what he did, taking the concepts he saw in this operating system and applying it to the web is what he did. And so that can be traced back to what these group of people, not just Steve Jobs, did, but the group of people did within the Next OS, making it network, making it easy to find a printer on the network and print to it, making it easy to find files on a network and getting to those files, making it easy to send thousands of emails instead of just one. On and on and on is what this Next computer did. And again, I didn't realize any of that. I wasn't following any of that. I was following Windows 95 and having all my fun. It was great. And then it wasn't until later I started watching old videos. You can go watch old videos of these and starting to realize, holy crap, I saw that in Windows NT4. So this came out 3-4 years earlier on Next Step in their OS, and then it ended up in Windows NT. And so you could argue, oh, well, come on, that would have happened anyway. But I don't ever agree with that. That would have happened anyway type of attitude that people have. Oh, somebody would have done it. That's just belittles what the creators did. Right, here's a directory browser, and everything runs off of these little tiny things. Here's a dock. There's a dock that happens. And so this was Next. And when Apple was dying, they were absolutely dying. They had, just to kind of give you a graphical journey, they had OS 9. We better put Apple on there just in case. So they had this. This is what they had. They had Apple OS 9. And that's what it looked like, and really hadn't changed too much. They added a little color in there. So 7 looked like this, 8 looked like this, 9 looked like this. And they didn't have anywhere they were going. It was just, their operating system hadn't improved probably since 1990, I would say. They used to like to brag about Windows 95 is Apple 87 or something like that. It's just so stupid because they didn't have a multitasking operating system. They didn't even have a preemptive, really. They just basically, you would click on and be running this, and when you clicked over here, it stopped running that and left the screenshot basically, and then you ran this. It was not a modern operating system, and they just couldn't seem to get it done. And that was likely because, right, over time, they'd lost all the intellectuals that did that stuff. And so they were like, what are we going to do? Unbeknownst to most people, this saves Apple. And I talk about this in my 100 class, so I'm not going to talk too much about it here. But this iPod, that's one of the first ones. Really not very close to the first ones. I could pull up first gen iPod, but the iPod saves them. So basically what happens is, Steve Jobs actually gets hired on at Apple. So Apple's like, hey, we're like, I don't know, 4 months away, and we're going to have to close our doors. We have no place to sell our PCs. Nobody's buying our PCs, and I mean Macs. Please come back and help fix this problem. And they were looking at buying, actually, because I got a few of these open now, BOS. So people that got fed up at Apple went out, and they were old Apple employees, and then they went and created this operating system called BOS. And this was about the same time that Windows 95 comes out. This is a nice, pretty operating system, and you could buy this off the shelf. And so they were pissed off because then Apple comes to them and says, hey, can we buy BOS from you and we'll make it the next Mac OS? And they say, oh, yeah, for, what did they say, $26 million. It was something really high. And they're like, oh, we can't afford that. And they're like, yeah, stick it to you, right? So when they actually hired Bill back, Bill Gates? No. When they hired Steve Jobs back, Steve said, well, you can take Next OS, because really Next OS, those machines were expensive. They were high-end expensive. And so they had this little tiny niche that they were playing to, which was the scientific market. And nobody else was really buying these. And so they were kind of at the end of, we're going to end up closing our doors too. So you can buy this. And I think they ended up selling it for like 6 million or 9 million or something. So I'll come back as the intern chief CEO, and you guys can have this OS and buy it off of us. So that was a lot cheaper. That was a lot cheaper than using this BOS that was going to be twice as much. And so they buy Next OS and Next Step, and that becomes basically the new operating system. At that time, then they do some upgrades to making the Unix core, whatever, but that pretty much becomes it. In the meantime, while he's sitting there, he's looking and going, wow, all these music players are coming out, and that's really cool, and none of them work right. So let's make one that works. And then boom, right, they just take off. And this saves the company, this, not the other. And so BOS ends up getting sold, and I think they ended up making maybe 6 million off of it. It's kind of a sad story for them. But Next OS, which was a very, very solid operating system, then they end up releasing basically year 2000. So about the time XP comes out, they end up releasing, let's see. That's not what I wanted. That might give me what I want. Let's find out. No, that's the first, yeah. I want first Mac OS X. Whoops. There we go. And so they end up releasing this one right here. That's what it looked like. I love the lines on that, actually, from a graphical point of view. But this is what it ended up looking like, the first one that they released in 2000. And so it's a lot of people at the time were just like, where did this come from? How did they do that so easily and quickly? And it's like, well, no, there was 15 years of prior development to create this. And then so when they took Next Step, they reskinned it, and they took up the graphical interface to a whole new level. that people hadn't thought about. I mean, you could zoom these pictures in, they were huge and they looked like they were real things. That's something that was not happening, right? So just as a comparison, an operating system that I loved dearly, honestly, it had its problems, but I really loved it, is Windows XP. Right, most of you have seen it. Some of you are like, no, I'm too young. Right, that's not what it looked like. These are mostly just desktops. That's pretty much, this is pretty much, want to pull up one, that's what it looked like. Let's get that one going. All right, so you got this, that's what you got on Windows, and you got this. And so clearly you should see, oh, wow, that's like stunning. This one is like, cool, that's cool. But this one's like, holy crap. But again, that was also part of what they're trying to do, right? Nobody's buying their stuff. They're not selling anything, hardly. I can't say anything, but they're not selling much. They need people to look at this and go, whoa, that's really cool. There's Internet Explorer on there. In any case, that's where Mac OS came from. This long line of Unix dating back to Next Step and being able to build on that. You just don't all of a sudden make something. So even when you look at Chrome OS, right, they're taking what happened in Linux prior. They're not making everything brand new and trying to figure all that out. They're building on what people have done in the past. And so that's a little history of Mac OS and how much that's been copied. You can research that on your own. That's fascinating to me.